Now, Steve in Erith disagrees with me on the casuals, and that's why he's up next. Go ahead, Steve.
Hello, George. How are you?
I'm well, sir. I'm well.
Good man. Good man. As obviously, in your past, you walked on strikes in the Dockers in the East End of London.
Yes, I did.
Yes, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, a majority of them were very right-wing rather than left-wing.
Well, there were militant trade unionists. That's all that mattered to me. I'm not sure what their political views were. They certainly didn't vote right-wing, Steve, because the Dockland areas were rock-solid Labour seats.
Well, I come from the East End, and to be honest with you, George, I wouldn't lie to you. My mother was an immigrant to this country, and I know what it all means. However, I don't know too much about this casuals march today, but they do have a right to express their opinions, surely, as long as they don't incite violence.
Well, let me ask you a question, Steve. Does a Nazi demonstration have a right to march through Golders Green?
When you say Nazi, are we talking about Germans, or are we talking about
British? No, British Nazis. Do they have a right to march through Golders Green?
I've never seen a British Nazi, George. So you've got me.
Well, there are plenty of them, and plenty of people have been convicted for fascist.
Could you name them?
Yes, I'll name them. I'll name the deputy leader of the British National Party. I'll name sundry leaders of the British National Party.
Such as who?
Well, I'll give you their names if you like, but what's your point? Are you denying it?
Well, I'd like to hear it from my MP.
Well,
you're a member of Parliament.
I'm certainly not. I'm certainly not your MP. But the leadership of the British National Party and the National Front before it is seated with people who have been photographed in Nazi uniforms. One of them was elected to the European Parliament just in June. Just in June of this year. He was one of the founders. Let me finish. He's one of the founders of the National Socialist Movement in Britain, and there's a picture of him. I've got it of him wearing a Nazi-style uniform. So British Nazis do exist, and one of them's even been elected to the European Parliament.
So would it be wrong then to say, George, that we might have other people that dress in communist, in Russian?
No, but no, you're missing my point, Steve. No, Steve, you're missing my point. What I'm saying is Golders Green is a heavily Jewish area.
And there's good people.
Marvellous. And the last thing in the world that I would allow would be people who either deny that the Holocaust took place or actually in their hearts probably welcomed it, marching through a heavily Jewish area. So there's not an unlimited right of people to demonstrate, if by demonstrating they're likely to cause racial hatred and cause violence to erupt, which is exactly what would happen if Nazis marched through Golders Green.
So would it be right then that we ask everyone else that any other religion, Muslims, anything else, George, could march through a predominantly Anglo-Saxon area?
Well, if they were seeking to...
Would they not be inciting?
If they were... No, but first of all, there are very few predominantly Anglo-Saxon areas, Steve. You may be an Anglo-Saxon, though from what you've said, it doesn't sound like it. If your mother was an immigrant, unless she was an immigrant from Germany, seems unlikely that you're an Anglo-Saxon. Are you an Anglo-Saxon, Steve?
Yes, I am, George.
Where was your mother an immigrant from, then?
She was from Ireland.
Well, I'm here to tell you, Steve, that Anglo-Saxons don't come from Ireland.
I think you're wrong there, George.
No, I think I'm right. Steve, no, we'll not move on. You see, you defined yourself, and you sought to conjure an image of an Anglo-Saxon area, and I've just proved to you how stupid that is. You yourself are not an Anglo-Saxon.
No, you haven't. You haven't proven nothing to me.
You are not an Anglo. If your mother is Irish, you are not an Anglo-Saxon.
What you've done, George, you're making an argument here. What I'm saying, let's go back to what I first said. If these people was to go on this march, as long as it was friendly, not inciting violence, because I don't agree with violence, They have the right to express their right of opinion.
Well,
Now, you may not agree with it, and I may not.
There are two answers to that, Steve. The first is that a group calling itself Casuals United, and I now have the internet stuff that they've been putting out in advance of this demonstration, cannot remotely be described as peaceful demonstrators. Secondly, by demonstrating in the heart of a city where there are hundreds of thousands of Muslims against the presence of Muslims in Britain, you have per se a case of incitement to racial hatred and conduct likely to lead to a breach of the peace. And that's what we got. And that's why it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Just the same as Nazis shouldn't be allowed to march through Golders Green.
I'll agree with you, George. I don't want Nazis.
Thanks. Well, I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead then. I got a rare moment of agreement from Steve in Erith in Kent, the Anglo Saxon, half of whose blood is Irish. 08717 22 33 44.